I think it's on now. Okay, so anyway, welcome to anybody who shows up for all of this. I felt like doing a live stream today because, like, well, not only because I actually have time to do it, it's not like from before where I've actually been kind of busy the last few weeks, but I actually have some time today to do this. And I got to thinking about this whole thing. The more I think about just kind of the way that I want to explain it with this gambling junkie problem that exists. And by gambling junkies, I mean just everybody out there with this addiction to number go up forever. Like there's never a correction anywhere. And this has been bugging me for a while. But it's like, there's a lot of young Americans that would like to participate in the economy, right? And many of them have a difficult time functioning in the economy because the previous generations wanted all those numbers to go up forever. So they wanted to have, it's like, well, you wanted a bunch of renters and tenants. You didn't want people owning property, because if younger people bought property and they owned houses, then as with a lot of things, they start to have an opinion on property taxes, right? They start to get a little one-sided, say, hey, hold on a second here. I don't want to have all these giant property taxes, right? Okay, so, but we didn't have that, did we? Instead, we had a whole bunch of people who, and investment firms buying up all these houses, all these, starter homes, traditionally starter homes, right? And then trying to get $2,500 a month rent or more in some cases out of these houses, rather than the younger people buying those houses up and actually living there. Because of this addiction, this number has to go up forever, and of course it has to go up because of all the debt that's occurred, incurred during this process. So every time an investor buys a house, it's not like they're just going into their sock drawer and pulling out a big ball of sweaty money and then paying for a house. That's not how that works. Most of them, what they're doing is they're just leveraging it, which means the money is created out of nothing, which means that there's a bunch of debt now, and then there's a bunch of debt that needs to be paid back with interest. And as a result of that, all of these asset prices have to just keep artificially going up forever. There was never really any thought as to like, what would that do to the next 3 generations behind you if you do that? If you keep doing that, what happens? In other words, there's always this idea that, I mean, I have to say it kind of this way, but I get a little frustrated with the people out there that are peddling the so-called idea of capitalism, and I use that term advisedly. I'm just using it as a placeholder word because I can't think of a better word to use. But it's like, okay, you're doing that, but there's supposed to be a downside. There's supposed to be a risk involved. And if there's never any risk involved and you're always getting bailed out because of government spending, or because you go and lobby Congress or your local zoning board, so that way houses that are affordable, so not affordable housing the way that you think of it, like, because we all think of when we say, oh, affordable housing, you mean like, cheap crack houses. No, that's not what we're talking about. Housing, the term affordable housing, the way I'm using it, I'm using it in kind of the more parochial sense, meaning just houses that people can actually afford to purchase. That's what I mean when I say that. But if you use the government to keep people from doing that, it's like, okay, well then what exactly about that is so-called capitalist? Because you're forcing there to not ever be losses for you. You're forcing losses for everybody else, though. Everybody else gets to lose on this. So it's like, okay, well, this is privatized gain, socialized losses. That sounds a whole hell of a lot like an insurance company or a bank, right? So this has been rattling around for quite a while. And then, on top, I'm watching all of this hypocrisy just continue to get worse and worse and worse. It's like we're hitting terminal levels of hypocrisy. And if you've followed my work for any length of time, you know that, like, there's the difference between the benign hypocrisy, you shouldn't smoke, kids, that's the benign hypocrisy that only affects, somebody who does something like that, and then what do people do? They just look at them and say, dude, you're stupid. Like, you're an obvious hypocrite, right? It would be like me giving you health and fitness advice, right? You would say, if I did that, you would appropriately say something like, dude, why would I take health and fitness advice from the Pillsbury Doughboy? Why would I listen to him about that? Clearly, right? You wouldn't, okay? But that's a benign form of hypocrisy. That's very different. It hits a little differently when you're forced to endure all of the hypocrisy and you can't walk away from it because, well, the government's, the government's enforcing it, or a bunch of corporations are enforcing it. These are all the same people, and at least from my perspective, these are all the same basic people. I don't think you can put a cigarette paper between any of them. The giant so-called corporate oligarchs and the giant government oligarchs, they're the same people. It's a revolving door. They all work for each other. They all work with each other. For some of you who do know that I was in the pawn business for a long time, I would go to SHOT Show in Vegas, and I would see all the latest and greatest developments in the Second Amendment hardware. I think it's how I have to say that on a live stream. I have to be careful how I say these kinds of things, but because I don't know what TikTok's rules are anymore. Like they keep changing their rules. I know. So anyway, so I don't want to have my feed cut instantly like they did last time. But you go to the SHOT Show and you'd see all this stuff, and knowing that that's all just going to be more and more, propped up by spending. So anyway, let me click on this here, and this is going to scroll like all the way down. So if I missed anything that you said, I got to scroll back all the way back up. Let's see if I missed anything. And hold on, doggone it. I don't know what loss we're talking about, but let's see here. So, but anyway, that was just something that I was kind of thinking about. Was like, okay, well, why is it exactly that's the case? I mean, why can't the prices ever come down? What's the problem with an economy actually trying to solve scarcity coordination, or how? I don't understand your question. I'm sorry. I mean, phrase it differently, possibly. There's nothing really wrong with an economy trying to fix itself, I suppose. An economy is just people, but you have to be able to allow failure. And if you're never going to allow failure, then sorry. I mean, that's not a real economy of any kind. You're just propping that up with more and more spending. So I don't see how that would work. So that's it on the Epstein files. Apparently, I don't think there's anything's going to come out of that. I'd be very surprised if anything comes out of the Epstein files at this stage of the game. Not the way things are going on. Convention of States repeal 1951. Sure, I suppose. I don't know enough about it to make a comment on it. Sorry. It's probably outside of my wheelhouse, or it's not something that I've really spent a lot of time researching. So, but anyway, this idea where everything this has been bugging me, that everything has to go up forever, kind of thing, because eventually you run out of up. It's just like saying that that everything, there's this big economic boom. Usually those correlate with birth rates. If you have birth rates increasing, well, then sure, your economy is going to expand, because by virtue of you have more people, you have more players in the game, so your economy is going to expand. By contrast, if your birth rate starts declining, which is where the U.S. is at right, actually not just the U.S., but something like 96 other countries right now are in decline. They're in demographic decline. They're not having enough kids. They're certainly not cranking out kids the way that the boomers were cranked out between 1946 and 1964. So they're certainly not cranking out that many kids. And so, yeah, I mean, you would think that conversely your economy might slow down a little bit, but nobody ever wants to slow it down, right? I mean, it's like anything else, it's like, no, I need an 8-ball to get through the rest of the day. Yeah, that's just seems how it works for me, from what I can see anyway. So I'd like to see what exactly, how exactly this is supposed to work out, other than just, you have to continually go after more and more conquest, which to me is like, if you have to keep conquering or doing that, to me, that's like a sign that your civilization failed. That's right. That's it, right. It's like running. It's like saying, oh, I can't compete in the marketplace anymore so quick. I have to run to the government and have them buy all my products. You know, do a no bid, cost plus fixed fee government contract to buy my product because nobody in the market will buy it because it's either too expensive, it doesn't work, or it's just complete garbage. You know, I mean, for real. I mean, I think anybody who's ever worked on military vehicles will tell you that. I'm not talking about the military vehicles that have the cat engines. I'm talking about the ones that have all the crappy engines in them and everything. Yeah. As someone who has worked on military vehicles, I can tell you, like dude, who designed this idea? It's basically designed to fail. Well, yeah, because they make more money off that kind of stuff. Your knowledge about the economy is the final truth, awesome and scary. I try. I mean, it's really, just so you know, like it's just paying attention. Anybody can do this if you're just paying attention to it. Now, granted, I have a little bit of and I forget about this, but I actually have the benefit of a fairly stellar education. So not the kind of education that one might think, you know, like where you think, oh, you went to like a really prestigious school and you had like really exotic professors that had all kinds of like, you know, collective thousands of years of experience and know-how and stuff. No. I went onto the real world and got hit with a stick every time I got something wrong and knocked unconscious. So that's what happened to me. And when you do that enough times, eventually you see the stick coming, right? And you're like, hold on. And you know, it's sooner or later you just kind of you get all this stuff because it gets just drilled into your head. In other words, you lose enough money, then as with anything, I would tell anybody this, like, dude, you lose enough of your own money, eventually you will develop intelligence. You know, at least not to, you know, at least not to try and lose your money, you know what I mean? So, you can manage AI summary. I don't know what we're talking about, TikTok, sorry. TikTok does all this stuff. I was thinking about your story. Come on. I was thinking about your story the other day about working for the right guys. I'd say, yeah, some people have. Some people have been very, very lucky like that. When I was, for those who don't know, I grew up. I started working when I was like 11, right? I mean, like I think with a lot of Gen Xers, that's kind of true. That this weird thing where someone doesn't have their first job until they're in their early 20s is really a very strange phenomenon to me. That's really weird to me. Most of us grew up doing something as kids before we got jobs. Well, in my case, I started when I was like 11. I was a busboy. And then right around about, I want to say about age 18, I worked for a guy who was really ruthless, really shrewd, and he was very, very curt, very blunt, and just all around. He was difficult to work for. He was a very difficult personality to work for. His personality was real similar to mine, so we clashed quite a bit. But he was really tough, but he was fair, and he didn't rip off customers, or at least he did not deliberately. Like he wouldn't. Thank you. He wouldn't deliberately like try and rip people off, and he really went kind of out of his way to make customers happy. And he worked in his business. So he wasn't one of these absentee owners where he just owned the company and then just never showed up. There's lots of that right now. No, he actually worked there, and he worked there full time. And a lot of time, and in fact, actually, he worked there as many hours as I did. And I worked among the longest hours because I had the roughest job. I did not only sales and everything else, but I did everything he did. So I did the accounting on top of that. So this is when I was 18 doing all this. So the other guys would like take off, and I would stay there a lot of times with him doing all the book work. So not only did I didn't have to do just my job, but I did his job with him. Well, when you do that, you gain an enormous amount of knowledge of the back end of business that you don't get when you're a kid typically. It's rare to run into that, you know, for young people to get that kind of real world, on the ground, real time, back end business type experience. And so I had that advantage. There was I had an employee a long time, I think I told the story a long time ago, but there was in our store we had there was this young lady who came in and she wanted a job, and she was like 15, and I said, well, hey, look, I mean, I can't just hire you. Like, you need to bring your mom in. Like, we need to, because you want to be here on school days, so like I need to talk with your parents about this. And her mom came in and said, no, it's cool. She can work after school and so forth, and she can do X amount of hours. I said, okay, well, we can do that. And I told her kind of the same thing. You know, I said, you know, this isn't to brag. This is just pointing out that, like, you have an opportunity here that everybody here in this building, myself included, I mean, like, all of us are all business owners. All of us have done this for decades. So so whatever you're learning here, you're not just learning from other employees or managers, you're learning from people who have been doing this for decades, and you're learning all of the back end stuff. And what you're hearing is also a lot of the back end conversation, because most of the conversations that we're having, you know, as the owners of these companies and everything, like, we're having real conversations that involve real money. And, you know, she was able to hear all this stuff. So it's like, yeah, that's how it is. But yeah, that's the reality. And then later on, I worked for another guy again. He was much quieter. His personality was completely different from mine. His personality then was like a lot like mine now. I barely talk to anybody. if given the opportunity, I barely speak to people if I'm able to get away with it. But he was another one that was just really, really, really good. He was very shrewd, but again, same thing, very fair. And I learned that if you want to call it a value, I would call it a value, I suppose. And I learned that value from those guys. Hold on, the thing scrolled on me again. Early on, there were days that I know, it's how it is. You know, hating guys that you work for and everything. Yeah, that's just it. And there were many days that I did not like either one of those guys. But at the same time, like, you after a while, you get to realize why they're like that. You get to understand what's causing that. And it isn't the stress of business. It's not that. It's just that they have a lot going on, and you're one of 50 other things they're thinking about. So they're not really, they're not really focused on, like, making you have a good time. They're just, you are one of the masses, and they've got 25 other things they got to work on in the next 10 minutes, and you're just one of them. So, hold on here. Rare to find someone young with interest. It kind of is. I think that actually comes down to just to comment on that, I think that comes down to a lack of instilling that in kids. So like, in schools, I think that there's a lot of young people that would absolutely be down for learning, like, real stuff. I think the problem is that most of it gets caught up. Most of their learning time gets eaten up by teachers trying to teach from textbooks or trying to present material that they're told to present. Like, because that's kind of how it works, right? I mean, modern teaching, as I've seen it, is the teachers are told 100%, and in no uncertain terms, you will present X amount of material, and you will make your students memorize this and regurgitate this on paper. That is not teaching. Not by my standards, that's not teaching. That's just indoctrinating. That's just forcing somebody to learn something, or at least to memorize something. They don't need to learn it, they should memorize it. Regurgitate it on paper, pass the test, and they're gone. Whereas I think if younger people were brought in and you're just standing there, like, if I were running a classroom, for example, I would never do this, but if I were running a classroom, it would be something like, do you kids want to learn anything at all, or not? You just want to write out the clock? Because if you just want to write out the clock, dude, I got other things I can go do. But if you want to actually learn some stuff, what do you want to learn? Most young people will tell you something they want to learn, if they want to learn anything at all. That, like, it's usually going to be, I want to learn how to be rich. I want to make money. I want to do this. I want to do that. Yeah, something like that. Lean into that. If they said they want to learn something, then you're actually feeding into what they said. Any good competent salesman will do that. I'm not even very good at sales, but even I know that it's not true until the customer says it, right? Then when the customer says it, then it becomes true, at least in their mind. So that's just kind of sales 101, right? Well, do the same thing with kids. Just say, okay, do you want to learn anything? If the answer is no, you're not going to teach them anything anyway, right? When the student is ready, the teacher appears, and not before. Like right now, we have this weird system where and I've said this on countless occasions, where it's like the teacher is ready, the student must obey. Dude, that's how you can't do that with people. That's not going to work. You're going to get this disaster that we see right now of just a bunch of people that are obedient to everything. They just go along to get along, and that's it. And it's none of that is going to work long term. It'll eventually fall apart, and it wastes, exhausts, and murders itself. That's exactly what happens with systems like that. So yeah, you have to go past that. Thank you to whoever that was. And so yeah, I would say that you just find the kids and just ask them, like, what do you want to learn? What do you want to, like, I want to learn how to make money. Okay, well then let's explore that idea. First of all, let's explore, like, do you want to manufacture anything, or you just want to try and make money? Because there's lots of people in this world who just want to win lotteries. Because at that point, you're just talking about gambling. Yeah, that's no problem at all. We can show you how to do the math. Look, let's count cards. Let's set up a casino here in the classroom and stuff, and you guys can learn how basically this doesn't work. The only way you can win, in the gambling business is to own the casino. That's the only way you really win. The players don't stand a chance mathematically, so. But if you want to make a product and you want to build something that people want, you want to actually work in a demand position, okay, well then that's a little different story. I used to use an example a long time ago of teaching kids like where a fire hydrant comes from. You just look at a fire hydrant, a fire plug outside on the street, like, hey, where do fire hydrants come from? Who makes them? How do they get there? Who puts them there? Who maintains them? Do they need maintenance? What kind of maintenance do they need? There's so many questions about that, and those are practical things that people can learn, and you can draw a ton of lessons from all that kind of stuff. Just some carefully stocked bookshelves and being a little bit creative, you can get a lot of, I think, young people to start asking a lot of questions, which is what you want. Asking questions is a sign of interest. If they're not asking any questions, then they're not interested. And you can't force that. So, I mean, there you go. Let's see here. Hold on. Doggone it. This whole thing's screwed up on me here. Consistently, the next guy I worked for, consequently, the next guy I worked for, taught me what not to do in business. Yeah, that's a big one. That's a big one. If you can find, if you're in the business world, if you're in small business, that's a huge one. What not to do is actually pretty important. So you live the way we should have been living when you were younger. I guess so. If I take your meaning that way, yeah. I mean, that's just kind of it. Is it like younger? I don't think younger people are a lost cause. I mean, I've said this for a long time. Kids are born. You're born a natural scientist. Whoever you are watching this, you are born a scientist. Think about it. Everything you do when you're born, when you're a little kid, from when you're a little guy up, everything is constantly learning and taking in huge amounts of input and then processing it. That's what you're doing the entire time you're a kid. So kids learn incredibly fast. The thing is that kids get content. They get an enormous amount of content. Education, and by my way of thinking, is adding context to their content. Okay? Thank you so much. So because they have tons of content. There's no shortage of content. There's content freaking everywhere. It's a matter of folding that into context, so that that's why adults can learn faster than kids, because they have context. I don't have to, for example, I don't have to explain a whole bunch of stuff. There's a lot of inferred shorthand that exists, so therefore I don't have to go through and explain all this stuff with adults. With kids, you have to go through and explain everything from the foundation up, right? Because they have a bunch of content, but they don't have any context, so it's important. Those are the best men in school, hard knocks. Yeah, it is. I mean, it really is it can take a lot of time, but you pay for education either way. You either go and have somebody assuming that they actually are competent in teaching you something, assuming they know what they're doing. You can pay them to give you an education, and then it's on you to, once again, you take that content and the context with which you're given, and you have to fashion it into your style, your life. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it's So, get a skill and let indoctrinate. Yeah, I know it's really important. I'm glad to see that there are more people that are starting to look at the skilled trades. They're going to start flooding out, unfortunately, just again because you just don't. This is an uncomfortable part of the conversation that everybody thinks that, like, okay, their saving grace is going to go be do plumbing. Well, it may be for a little while, but eventually you can flood any market, like no matter what, any market that's out there, any job market, any labor pool, etc. You can flood that market with so many people. Even if you're the most competent, you can be the most competent right along with 500 other people that are just as competent as you in your area. And then prices start coming down a bit. And then at a certain point, there's this tipping point where it's just no longer profitable to be in that enterprise at all. Yeah, I mean, that kind of thing can happen. The trucking industry is kind of that way right now. The trucking industry, you can still kind of make money at it, I guess if you want to call it that, but you work an enormous amount of hours now to make a progressively smaller amount of money because it's been flooded. It got flooded out. It got flooded out years ago, actually, but it's really flooded out now. So, good evening to you too. What's in it for me? You saw that video. Good deal. I'm glad to see people are doing this. I'm glad to see people are catching on to the what's in it for me. I mean, I think that people need to do that. You know, and I don't mean I mean that in not in an arrogant way. I mean that in a brutal, punishing way. In that, like, this is, you know, here's what I mean by when I say what's in it for me. For the few of you that like really focus on some of the stuff that I talk about, you have The Merchant of Venice. Are you familiar with the play? It was written by Shakespeare. And there is a scene, a famous scene. It's one of the most famous scenes in all of Shakespeare, actually. It's up there with like To Be or Not to Be kind of thing. And it's this scene where Shylock is demanding the law this whole time. He's demanding the law. He's demanding word for word. He's gone beyond the spirit of the law, and he's demanding the letter of the law. And then finally, it basically flips on him, and it's because the law then flips, and since he's been demanding the law this whole time, the law then says, okay, well, now you're going to get nothing but the law, right? And it flips hard. And if you know the story I'm talking about, it flips very hard on Shylock, and it doesn't work out well for him. My allergies are messing with me today. Down here, it's still like, you know, springtime down here. So, and so it's when I say like what's in it for me, people need to. I'm saying it from that perspective. Like, no, put this all back on them now. You guys have done this for so long. You've abused the American people, and you've given all their money to every country. You have no problem at all printing trillions of dollars to give to everything else in the world except Americans. So Americans should say, no. You've taught us. You taught us how to. You showed us what works. You showed us as people, as Americans, that what you have to do is just demand free stuff and keep demanding. Okay, well then now we're going to demand. You know, so I'm not voting for you, for example. I'm never gonna vote for you again unless I get a check. You're going to have to just give me a new boat. I don't want a boat, but I mean, you get my idea. You give me a new house. I want fresh land. I want this. I want that. Just make up stuff that you want and say, I'm not voting for anything until I get these bribes, because you've done this with everybody else. So you taught the world that bribery is what works and outvoting everybody is what works. Well, here you go. How do you figure out what people want? I don't know what you mean. Like, you can ask them. I'm not trying to be, I'm not trying to be glib. I'm just like, it's like the chicks that are like, I don't know what men want. Like, have you asked them? Or are you asking other women? Because other women really don't know either. The inverse is true, by the way. So, I mean, if you could clarify that. I'm just weighing pros and cons. Life sucks. How much am I willing to risk? Yeah, I mean, it's that's how it works sometimes. Like, would I rather punch a clock until I'm 70 or hunt cartel for a payday? I don't know. I mean, who says you have to hunt them? I mean, maybe they pay well. You ever see, there's a Clint Eastwood movie called The Mule? You ever see it? Maybe they pay well. Maybe it's like, like, oh, but then I'd have to switch sides. Sides? What sides are you talking about now in this world? We live in a postmodernist, hellscape where there's no sides to anything now, right? They've made that very clear. I've been watching this unfold. I have the same internet you guys have. I've been watching this going like, all right, sides in what? Everything has become completely relativist at this point. All right. And by the way, I'm not even saying that that's a good thing. I'm just pointing out that that's what's happened. That's what I'm seeing. So, experience. Is content important to travel and see the best and the worst? Yeah, that might be it. Military might be it for some people. Anymore nowadays, I don't know. I think it depends on what you're. I think it depends on if you can say no to an order. Anybody who follows me pretty regularly, if you follow me over on Bird's site, I have my own opinions on that just because of what I've seen, empirically, and from friends. So I miss the days when those aha moments happen regularly. I get excited when, I know, those are kind of cool actually. It was just yesterday I realized that Brussels sprouts grow in like rice paddies and they're harvested on these little stalks, and they go like, I had never known that, right? I've never harvested Brussels sprouts, so I would have no way of knowing that. Let's see here. Trucking will be seeing a bottom soon due to the surprising amount of illegals in the industry. That's if they're deported. I'm not seeing it. There's like, you got to figure, and I'm not trying to be just contrarian here. I'm not just trying to be negative. But I am going to be honest with you because it's just who I am. And having been in that industry for as long as I have, I'm not seeing a whole lot of deportations. I'm not seeing guys getting pulled out of trucks, and I'm not seeing those trucks getting impounded or anything. I know that there's a few for the cameras here and there, but at scale, it's sort of like, it's the complaint that I have. Like, if you want to talk about the illegals and the deportations, yeah, let's have that conversation. That is getting weird watching 40 ICE agents show up to detain like 8 people. There's like, what, 50 million illegals estimated? Somewhere, let's go with the low number and say it's only 30 million. Let's go with the really low number, 30 million. You sent 40 guys to detain 8 people, and it took 4.5 hours. Dude, I'm a businessman. Right? Let's apply that to any business. If I had 40 employees that went to go do something, and it took them 4 hours, 4 times 40, that's 160 man hours. 160 man hours to detain 8 illegals. Not even deport, detain. Because now they have to go into the courts, and the courts are going to argue back and forth as who's operating as a corporation, who's not operating as a corporation, because many of them have LLCs. It may come as a surprise to some of you, but I'm in Texas, many illegals, they do know the system extremely well. They know, their lawyers know the system very well, and they know how to play it. And they know how to play it they play it just as well as I do. They know all the tricks. And so, yeah, then they have to go and argue in court like, well, was this person employed? What do you mean person? Define that. You mean, was this corporation hired by this person, and then this person who works here who happens to be illegal is part of, like, you see what I'm saying? Like, it creates a huge mess. And there's a ton of corporate veils to try and pierce. And it's not easy to do that because lots of other companies, corporate, by the way, for those of you wondering if you may not, for those of you who don't know this, a corporation is just a piece of paper. It's just a tax. It's just a filing status. It isn't a building. It's not a bunch of people. It's just a piece of paper. Anybody watching this video can go start a corporation today. Take about 20 minutes. Just go on the internet and go to your Secretary of State or whatever state you want, Nevada, Delaware, Texas, doesn't matter, and then you just start a corporation, and it's that fast, and then you can now operate like that, and you get around a whole bunch of stuff, and a lot of the illegals know this stuff. So yeah, it's a huge problem. And I'm just not seeing, I mean, like, again, not to be negative or contrarian, I'm just saying, like, just as a driver, it's just someone who sees this stuff. I don't see a whole lot of, there's still the signs all over the truck stops that say, please do not wash feet in the sink. And of course it's in English, so I don't know who they're telling that to, because I'm not the problem. I'm not gonna be washing my feet in the sink. Right? It's not to be a jerk about this, but dude, it's the truth, right? So, nobody wants data centers. There's a good topic right there. Nobody wants data centers. Nobody wants work. The market want right now. Okay, that's what you're talking about. No, you're right. I don't think there's an actual open market demand for data centers. They're a disaster. Look what they do. I mean, they bring nothing but doom to an area. They show up and they're like a blight. They siphon the resources, like, quite literally out of the ground, and there's nothing left. I mean, it's practically like they show up and salt the earth. It's really terrible. No, there isn't a market demand. What's a market? Just people. Do people want these? No, people hate these things. No, it's giant companies that are these giant subsidized mega corporations want those. The giant government wants that kind of stuff because they want to keep tabs on everybody. They want to make sure that everybody is doing as they're told. They want to keep track of everybody. So the more, I mean, you have a digital footprint, right? I mean, everybody knows this. You have a digital footprint. I think anybody watching this knows that everything you do is cataloged. Like everything you do on your phone, your iPad, doesn't matter. It's all cataloged. That information goes somewhere, and that's your footprint. If that footprint changes, it's cataloged. If that footprint stops, then they start going, okay, where is this person? What are they doing? They're up to something. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, and the more data you have available, and that's the whole. I mean, that, like, there's a remember that movie Point Break with Keanu Reeves. I mean, everybody loves that movie, right? I mean, you know, it's not a particularly great movie, but it's a great popcorn movie, right? And what does the FBI director say, or the guy who's in charge of the FBI? He's like, we crunch data here. That's what we do. We just look at data. Like, yep, they're basically data analysts. That's true. Yeah, there's some field work out there, but not most of it is just crunching a bunch of data. Well, that's what this is. So the data centers have a market for the government, so they'll print a bunch of dollars to pay for that. They'll print a bunch of dollars to have a bunch of no-bid contracts for the companies that own these data centers, which is, again, all fake. In a hard money economy, a real economy, like, no one would ever pay for that. No one wouldn't. I mean, they just wouldn't. They would run out of money trying to do it. They would go broke doing it, which would be what we would want to see, but that's not going to happen, is it? And nobody wants war. Well, normal people don't want war. You know, people who make money off of war want war. Those people want war. Everybody else, probably not so much. War is bad for business, and it is. I mean, for like regular business, yeah, it is. It's bad for business. Retire from power line work for 35 years. They're dying for people, but it's a 5-year. I'm guessing 5-year commitment was the rest of that sentence, or 5 years of training. Probably. That wouldn't surprise me. Hang on, I lost you. Especially when you're doing like, when you're doing that kind of work. I said, well, yeah, I mean, you can die doing work like that. What are you spitting on? Kind of everything. I mean, I already kind of said my piece as far as what I thought about, the giant casino that we all live in right now, where everything it's all about protecting the gamblers from losing any money, which is just weird to me. Greenland citizens should ask for $15 million. Yeah, ask for gold too. They could ask, do like Henry Ford did and say, nah, you need to pay me in gold only. You got to pay me in gold. Otherwise, if you're not going to pay me in gold, forget it. How do you figure out what would benefit everyone while moving away from what we know? Good question. I suppose it depends on what the market wants, and of course, right now it's hard to draw on what the market wants, because the market's been so abused, hasn't it? Yeah, I mean, we all kind of know that. So, As far as like figuring out what would benefit everybody, electricity. I like that one. Hang tight here. Having some kind of technical difficulty. What the heck? I'm having a technical difficulty, so bear with me a second here. Are we in the in the USA in big trouble? What do you mean by big trouble? I would say that there's a lot of problems. There's definitely a lot of issues that we could be focusing on that we're not. That's a bummer. I'd like to see that. I'd like to see us focus on more of these big problems that we're avoiding. We seem to be doing everything except those problems, right? For anybody who has kids, you know what this is like, right? Go clean your room. And they get busy doing everything except cleaning their room, right? All of a sudden, everything is way more important than that. Go clean your room. And then there's 50 other things they're doing, right? I mean, it's just kind of, this is just a natural thing with people. You know, politicians, etc. They're not going to want. They don't want to clean this. If you fix a problem, you know, a problem fixed is a customer lost. Kind of like, you know, a disease cured is a customer lost. Like, oh my gosh, I cured this disease. I can't juice this guy for any more money because we cured the disease. Yeah, same problem. Same. You know, it's just this problem record. And again, this kind of stuff only tends to work because the money's printed from nothing. If that wasn't a thing, then yeah, a lot of problems kind of solve themselves because there's just no way to pull these scams. You could try it for a while, but it only goes for so while. But yeah, are we in big trouble? I think that if it continues down this road, and it doesn't appear to be ending anytime soon, that people will start losing hope. There's already a few people that are losing hope, but I mean, I'm talking about on a very large scale. The people who, the normies, the so-called normies, the people who don't really well plugged in, they're not like news junkies. They're not people who are watching this stuff all the time and processing the information. They're not in business for themselves, so they don't really have a reason to. They're able to just go to a job and just, you know, for 8-10 hours a day and just focus on that. And eventually those people are going to probably start losing hope. That's a dangerous position to be in. You know, because once people start losing hope, then they kind of check out. They just say, you know, man, this really sucks. Everything's horrible. It's a lot of people that start getting into that mentality, and it's a spiral, and it's hard to get out of. And on a national level, I don't know how you could do it. I think it would. I mean, aside from just trying to inspire people the best that you could. But at the same time, if you're going to inspire people, they have to have some kind of hope that, okay, if this works, then here are the rules and here's what's going to happen, and it's not going to change. We're not going to change the deal on you. Because right now, that's the problem everybody has. Right? Everybody out there who's probably watching this right now, you've probably had this happen in your life. Every one of you. At some point, you got a job somewhere. Probably not all of you, but maybe some of you, where they told you a bunch of stuff, and then you went and did that job, and you did exactly what they said. And then all the promises they made to you about, yeah, you're going to make more money and be promoted and blah, 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 it never really happened. It never materialized. Especially for older people. This is older, meaning, like, let's say 40 and up. You've probably had that happen, right? Where it's been just, you were told a bunch of stuff and then the rules changed. Salespeople run into this all the time. They'll be given a territory. You know, let's say your territory are these zip codes, for example. And then you go out there and you build that territory up and you make a bunch of money out of it. And then they say, oh, great, look at how profitable you are. Now let's cut that territory in half. And you still have to make the same quota with half of it, but then we're gonna get the other half over here to Mr. Mike, and you're gonna, oh, by the way, you're gonna train him too. After it never ends, and it just goes like that all the time. Eastwood's character would have been fine, that movie, if he didn't buy that Lincoln. Yeah, I know, it is kind of a strange way that they went about that. I'm guessing that Ford or Lincoln, you know, kicked in a little bit of money or something like that for the movie. The ending was a little Disneyland, in my opinion, just my opinion. But that's Eastwood. Or that's as Disneyland as Clint Eastwood would do with something like that, because it's still, at the end of the day, it's still kind of a government worship movie, and it is. It's, as with a lot of things, you know, movies are propaganda. A lot of them, they suck. It's why they suck so much right now, is that, like, no director is willing to go out, or very few directors are willing to actually go out there and be dangerous. So 33 million for Greenland. I don't know what that meant. LLC commercials are off the. Yeah, that's what I mean. More people are figuring that stuff out. So the more people that figure that out, it makes it harder to adjust for your deportations like that. Hold on. It did it to me again. It's the way that it's the way of the TikTok scrolling thing here. Food, shelter, energy. Yeah, those are things people want. I mean, it is. You're right though, but it's tricky to find out what people do want. It's tough, especially like I said, especially now. But I suppose just listen to what people are trying to say, and then see if there's a way that you can maybe get it provided for them. One of the things that I noticed actually is that in my case, like I speak fluent English, and in some sectors, that's surprising, and so people will call back because you speak English. Just saying, you know. U.S. military versus cartels. Who you got as a gambling junkie? My money's on the cartels. That's very possible. It really is. I don't gamble when I can avoid it, but that is certainly very possible that the cartels may give them a run for their money. They are pretty well armed and pretty well financed, and the U.S. military has proven that pockets of it can be very efficient and very effective, but on a macro level, they can't hold Baghdad. They like, right? I mean, you know, you have the people with the farmers with AK-47s out in Southeast Asia, and it's like, yeah, you're gonna. I mean, so yeah, there's just that, and of course, on top of that, wars just swallow money. They just bankrupt everything, and they do. They just swallow up money like a black hole, and that's just how it is because everything is expensive. And of course, that's what they want, right? People make lots of money off of that. So we'll see. I mean, depends on how long they want to play this little game with it. You know, look, anybody who's smart enough to know this, you know, this has nothing to do with drugs. They don't care about drugs, dude. It's an excuse to go burn a bunch of money. So like they don't care about your children. Like, oh my God, they're poisoning children. They don't care about that. They absolutely do not care about it. If they cared about children, they'd be looking into the 330,000 children every year in the U.S. that disappear. I couldn't believe that number. I heard these guys talking about it, and they were looking at the stats, and it's like in the U.S. alone, it's 330,000 children per year that vanish. If you cared about little kids, I would guess you would go after that first. That would be your priority. Would be something that, like, dude, that's obvious, as opposed to the war on drugs. Come on, I mean, just whatever, man. And let's see here. The go messing with the money trick, yeah, exactly. Not only are they messing with the money, but they're now taking away rights. Yeah, I know, that's kind of it. I have yet to see any of the gun laws be challenged. I bring that up all the time. Why do they still even exist? I mean, I'm actually asking that as I'm asking seriously, non-rhetorically. I would ask, why is that? Because as anybody who's followed me for a while, you know that, like, I ask this question all the time. Why? I was told forever this was because of those evil Democrats. Like, all right, well, there's no evil Democrats that are in power now, so que pasa? What's going on with that? You shouldn't be bound by the law if you're not protected by Biden. Shouldn't be bound by the law. Gives and take its contract. So I'm not trying to be offensive. I just it was a slightly clumsy structure. In Belarus, there's no cartels. The same in China and most countries. Yeah, I mean, I suppose it depends on how you want to approach it. I mean, you can do it the totalitarian way. You know, I mean, but the thing is that as I would always ask anybody, do you really believe that any of these people that are in the positions of power who managed to eradicate their competition, the cartels. Do you really believe they don't do any of this stuff? Most of these people are junkies. Most of these people, they do whatever they want. That's the whole point of power. That's the whole reason that you do it. That's the whole reason you become a powerful person, is so that way you can do something other people can't. And the U.S. wasn't founded on that. The U.S. was supposed to be founded on the idea that the American people are left alone. They are free to do whatever they want, and the government is supposed to be a very small, passive organization that just exists if the people need the government, and that's it. It's not supposed to be this top-down nonsense that we're having now. I've been pointing this out for a few days, that like this top-down thing, where everything is an edict from on high that's being handed down to people. Like, here, so let it be written, so let it be done. And it's like, this is ridiculous that this is the case. Having a handful of oppressive people that are rich and having a rich government that just do whatever they want and hand down a bunch of edicts from on high, that's not really a flex. That's been going on forever throughout human history. The United States of America was the exception to that rule. At least it was supposed to be the exception to the rule. It was supposed to be the exception where it's like, yeah, you're not supposed to have that. It was supposed to be a very strong, rich people and a very small government. It's supposed to be the inverse of that. So, yeah, I mean, because I'm actually indifferent to it. Anybody out there claiming that, well, but they're poisoning our children. First of all, who is they? Second, I always ask that. It's like, it's whenever I hear the we and the they, like, okay, stop. Who are, like, explain this stuff. But if it's like, yeah, I mean, like, it's sort of like the whole idea about, making up the devil to have something to blame other than your crappy parenting. Like, oh, it's this or that. Like, no, this is just your crappy parenting. Because kids do what you do, not what you say. That applies to everybody. You, me, everybody. There's no one escapes that. That's just kind of how that works, because kids do what you do, in moderation to excess, until they learn some control. And yeah, so I mean, if you're just not a very good parent, well, then you don't get to blame everybody else for that. And as far as like substances and everything, like, again, there's also the scientific part of that. And especially when you tell people over and over not to do something, that's usually not going to work. It doesn't work like that. You end up automatically creating a bunch of curiosity, as opposed to somebody who just figures it out and says, this is kind of boring, I'm going to do something else. That was kind of the case for me. I didn't have a problem with trying a bunch of stuff out and everything, and I'm not prone to any kinds of addictions like that as a result, because just like I kind of do my thing and then just like, you know what, I'm going to go to the stuff. Just have other things to do. Mexican cartels exist for the reason to keep Mexico poor. They certainly can. I don't see any reason why they couldn't. Pope never said worked against cartels. They can shut them down in one day. Yeah, probably. I like to gamble. There's a lot of people who do. You're not alone on that. All those gigantic mega casinos, those $1 billion, $2 billion structures, those are built with losers' money. I've seen something about gambling here. I followed you for a while. Welcome. Basic universal income versus or super virus. I'm going to go with they'll probably do some kind of hybrid of the two. But the UBI is only going to be, UBI is just a bailout for all these asset prices so they don't have to come down. These ridiculously inflated asset prices that should be like going to zero. They should be going to the cash price. But to keep that from happening, we'll do this UBI thing. But the UBI is only going to be for certain people. It's not going to be for people like me. It's not. I already know that. There's never going to be a check that says, here, Axel, here's your UBI check every month. And no matter what kind of horrible opinion and how many narratives you go against, we're just going to keep giving you money. I seriously doubt that. Because I'm not a slave to any narrative one way or the other. I don't clan. And as a result of that, it's like, well, yeah, when you have somebody that uncontrollable, dude, they're not going to, like, no. They're not going to give any money. No, you have to, I mean, like, that's the problem with things like this, is that your loyalty is basically being purchased, and you have to, keep in mind, this with an inflating currency. So your UBI, it's like your UBI is going to end up being like Social Security. So your Social Security checks, what are the Social Security payments? Something like $2,800 a month or something. And they're probably not even that. They're like $1,200 a month, $1,500 a month. But the illegals will get $4,000 or more. Yeah, they're going to give more money to the people. They're going to subsidize more behavior. You know what I mean? Like, because anytime you subsidize something, a behavior, you get more of it. So if the behavior is to drop a bunch of anchor babies, well, then you're just going to get more anchor babies. 600 to 950 per day. So while everybody was arguing about, you know, what 2 days ago, the chick and the ICE agent, while everybody was arguing about that, and all the commentators are all burning their credibility on this, and at least in my opinion, on this one issue, and at least from something that is, I would consider to be at least questionable at best. Yeah, in the meantime, 600 to 950 anchor babies were dropped that day. So yeah, like I said, you know, that's just going back to what I was pointing out, like the 40 ICE agents showing up to detain 6 people, and then burning all those man hours. Like, how are you ever going to get ahead of that and get 30 million out of here? I don't see it. I don't see it. Like, I mean, years ago, I want to say about 2 years ago, I did a video on that where I pointed out that would be, that even if you just deported a stadium of people every day, like 40,000 people per day, it still takes like 3 years. And that's not accounting for the birth rate and the anchor babies. It's not accounting for any of that. Basically, the entire country would have to be employed to do deportations, and I just don't see that happening. You know, no, they want all this because they want the cheap labor. It's kind of how it works. It's the whole idea behind, you know, go absorb Greenland and South America and Latin America and so and Canada. It's like, yeah, because you think your wages are low now. You think you can't find work now. Wait until you're competing with a hemisphere, you know, of people who will do the job for way less. Yeah, I mean, because the currency goes further in their respective countries. So, or super virus. I'd take my chances with the virus at this point. You know, let's go full Fallout and try it out, man. It's a give and take, a social contract. You follow the law because they protect your rights. Again, that's assuming that they're actually doing that. This is one of those things that, like, yeah, I mean, hey, it always seems to be one-sided. Give us more money. It's like the I don't know, the Orange Messiah was going on about. There's all these promises that are stacking up right before the midterms, and knowing that they're probably going to lose. Hey, maybe they pull it off. Maybe they pull a rabbit out of their hat, and people are stupid enough to go vote for them again. And then it's just this is so painfully obvious what's going to happen here. I'm not even a political commentator, but even I can tell what's going on with this. They lose the midterms. And then it's, oh no, we were gonna do all this stuff, but now we can't. It's those damn Democrats again. Like, this is so obvious what they're doing. No, they can do any of this stuff right now. Why not do it right now? Why not end income taxes today? Why not end it right now, today? Do that, today. You know, why not send everybody, if you want to send everybody $2,000, send it out right now, today. Why are you waiting around? Like, no, it's deliberate. It's just, hey, you know, keep going along with this, and then we'll give you more. We'll give you. Dude, it's a con. This is the same. My business owners out there will all tell you the same thing. Anybody out there who's been in business or has been a business owner, a small business owner for more than about 10 years, they will all tell you they have run into people like this that will lead you on. They're just con artists, or they're delusional. Maybe they do believe this kind of stuff. I had a tenant one time, this is a long time ago when I was a landlord, a long time ago. I owned a building. I bought a sixplex. Believe it or not, I paid $105,000 for a sixplex. So that's how far back this was. And it was the very first building I ever purchased. It was the very first anything that I ever purchased from real estate. And there was a tenant in there that was just so delusional that he was I ended up having to evict, and I don't like doing evictions, but I ended up having to evict the guy because he was just delusional. Oh, I'm gonna get paid this week, I'm gonna pay you. And he would do this on and on and on and on and on. This went on for I think I put up with it for about 6 weeks before I'm like, okay, obviously this guy is either delusional or he's just lying, one of the two. Either way, it's a problem, he's gotta go. And then even on the day he was being physically, bodily removed by the sheriff's department, I'm not kidding about this, the guy actually be taken out of the building. Even when that happened, he was still telling me he was going to pay me. Like, this is your orange messiah. Like, it's crap. It's dude, these people are either delusional or they're just lying. That's it. They can't expect you to be bound by the law if you're not pretty. Yeah, exactly. Social contract implies strong feedback. No, it is right now. There's really no feedback. Why do we live? Why don't we live in fusion engines? No kidding. If only such a technology existed, right? Hold on here. Elite is above the law, above the social contract. Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean, and that's what I'm talking about. Is that at a certain, like that's kind of the whole point. At a certain point, like money will only buy you so much, right? Everybody knows. I think everybody instinctively knows this. Beds only get so big and soft. Cars only ride so nice. Houses only get so big and beautiful. Pieces of ass only get so good looking. At a certain point, the money kind of doesn't matter anymore. Now you need a new fix. That means being able to do something that other people can't do. This is super common, and it's very easy to. This isn't even me. This isn't an original thought of mine. This is just stuff that like is empirical, and other people talk about this too. Yeah, Erica Kirk. Yeah, I know. That is weird to me. That is a strange thing. I didn't even know who she was. This is sort of like the Kardashians. If you showed me a picture of a Kardashian, I would have no way of knowing who they were, unless I was able to compare the pictures because I just don't follow it. But that is the weirdest thing. The Erica Kirk thing, for someone who doesn't follow any of that stuff, and it's like, dude, how do I know what that is weird. Greetings from New Zealand. It's summer there, isn't it? It's nice. I imagine it's nice outside. Up here it's cold. It's like 50. That's 50 Fahrenheit. So UBI idea is against the whole concept of protagonism. Well, it's again, yeah, I suppose. I would just say that it's probably just against good common sense at this point, because it doesn't allow for prices to come down. That's why the elite will choose super virus or prison to die for people. Probably. It's probably going to be a bit of both. Would not surprise me. There we go. We got TikTok, its thing here. Why don't Americans unite in solidarity and do something about all corruption? Because what is the phrase? There's actually a phrase. It's like the tragedy of the commons, I think. I'm not an expert on this one, but there was somebody who pointed this out at one time. It was another guy, another content creator on TikTok that said, he talked about the tragedy of the commons. Everybody knows that they should unite and go do something about it, but the problem is the same problem it always is. Look at the January 6th people. Politics aside, whether I agree with their politics or not, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter at all. So for any of my commie followers or anything, like, dude, doesn't matter what their politics are. Look what happened to them. They went and did something. Regardless of what it was, whether you agree or disagree, they went and did something. Did anybody go break them out of jail? Did anybody go blow up the Death Star to get them out of jail? No. They all sat there for 4 years. And then had to hope that the Orange Messiah was going to give them a pardon. And yeah, and maybe a couple of them got a book deal out of it. Maybe some of them made a little money on some interviews, but other than that, they just had 4 years of their life turned upside down, probably lost everything. Many of them probably lost everything as a result of that. So yeah, that's the problem, is that people don't trust anybody anymore. I don't. There isn't an American out there I would trust anymore. Sadly, I hate to say that, but it's really true, because that includes like friends, family, etc. I just don't trust you people anymore, because I see the way that everybody gets treated on this. That's the answer, though. I mean, it's not an answer anybody wants to hear, but that's the answer. Now, let's say that because we all know what would happen, right? Let's carry this thought on through to its logical conclusion. What if, and I'm using the January 6 people, again, only for example purposes. Again, I'm not saying I agree or disagree with anybody's politics on this. I'm just using them for an example purposes only for this purpose of this discussion. Are we understood? We absolutely positive we're understood on this one. What if, and I'm doing that for more TikTok's benefit than anybody else, what if their friends said, that's it, we're gonna go do the Mission Impossible, or no, not Mission Impossible, it was Missing in Action, old Chuck Norris movie. we're going to do the missing in action thing, or missing in action 2, where we're going to go in, behind enemy lines and break all these POWs out. Well, what would you have to do that? Because it isn't play cards with people. It isn't stand here and have a logical discussion or anything. Nope, that's not what it takes. It takes doing a bunch of stuff that I can't say on TikTok, right? We all know that. It takes, let's use Star Wars. I'll use the Star Wars analogy. How many stormtroopers were taken out to get Princess Leia out of jail? Do you ever keep a count? I never did. I'm just saying, but it's probably like 40 or 50. So and that's a small number. Now imagine that there's all these hundreds of people. So how many stormtroopers in this hypothetical Minecraft scenario here would have to be to get them out? How would that be spun in the media? We all know. We all know exactly how that would get spun. We all know exactly how that would get spun. First of all, the word supremacy would be used like repeatedly. And it wouldn't make any difference what color someone is. That's got nothing to do with it. It would, it would be spun like that. And you'd have people like, for example, like my dad, okay, so my boomer dad, who believes that Trump is the Messiah. I'm not joking about this. I wish I was joking about this, but he actually believes he is the actual reincarnation of Christ, here to bring about peace on earth for 1,000 years and fulfill biblical prophecy, blah, 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 blah. He actually believes this shit. Those people, what do you think they would think of that? Yeah, so we all know. I mean, it's hard to have that discussion, but it's like, dude, it's the truth. And if you were standing here in my garage and I would be telling you this a lot more bluntly, and a lot more graphically, because I'm just that way. And like, yeah, that's the problem. So that's the reason, this is my circuitous way of answering this and stuff, and I had to do it this way because of this algorithms. But yeah, that's why Americans don't band together and do anything. Because if they do, they're immediately labeled a whole bunch of stuff that they're really not, right? One man's freedom fighters, another man's terrorist, right? We all know that. That's how that works. That's how propaganda works. And that's why countries like the US just continue to go body surfing down the tubes for that very reason. See, the crook, hold on here. It did it again to me. Oh, there we go. Okay, the crooks are masters of stealing their watch and selling it back to you. They are. They are very good at it. One of those rioters is running for office in my county in Florida. Which rioters? Oh, you mean like the January 6th people? Yeah, I mean, that's just it. I mean, like a few of them may have been able to do something with it. Because what would you do with your life after something like that, right? I mean, think about it. I mean, like, put yourself in that situation. Like, what would you do? And especially, this is the other thing too. What if if you have a group of Americans that are they're genuinely just trying to go back to something like the Constitution, how is that going to be spun? It's going to be spun horribly. And they're a bunch of fascists and they're communists and blah, blah, all these different words that they throw around that are just words to make people. They're words that nobody defines. And anybody who knows me well knows that, I mean, as soon as someone throws around buzzwords like that, I usually stop them and say, I want your definition. Don't throw words around like that without coming to the table with a definition, because if I start asking you questions, you are done. If I cross-examine you, you are done, because you're not going to have answers. I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions you're not going to have answers to, and you're going to look like, Dan Bongino. You're going to look like a bunch of these people that are like, just, dude, you're going to be trashed by a total nobody out here, a nobody with no education. As far as the world's concerned, I'm a complete nobody, and I like it that way. But it's like, yeah, I mean, a total nobody will completely destroy you, because if I start asking you to define these words that come pouring out of your blowhole, well, you need to answer them. And then we're going to use those and then those words will be used against you, because they're your words. I recommend, if you haven't seen The Merchant of Venice or the play or the movie and stuff, watch it, because there's a lot to be learned for that. Yes, did more important Trotskyists Christ socialism but loves Zionism. Sorry, I don't know what that means. Sorry. Do you prefer gold eagles or buffaloes? If you're talking about American Eagle coins, I like American Eagle coins. I think they're really nice coins. It's the one thing that I actually really like about our real money, our gold money. They are very pretty. They really are. If you're talking about like the older buffaloes, the numismatics, I don't buy it on numismatic value, if that's what you're referring to. I just, you know, if I'm buying gold, I'm buying it basically melt weight plus the premium, and that's it. 300 get Maduro out. Yeah, it's okay. So there it is. So there's the number. That's our benchmark. That's for one guy. What would it have taken to get all those people out? I mean, I realize that there's, you know, that there's some carryover there and so forth, but I mean, like, yeah. I mean, that's just it. It would be like the, you know, the Terminator 2 Judgment Day kind of thing, where you'd have to be mowing, right? I mean, that's what it would require, and everybody would go, oh my God, that's anti-American, that's anti-this, that's anti-that, until it costs nothing to be a patriot. You know, I mean, because then people become patriots after the fact. They say, oh wow, they liberated us. Like, yeah. I mean, you know, no thanks to you, right? It's always only 1 to 3% of people. It's never the huge masses that can do it, because again, for that very reason, the tragedy of the commons. Also, would you rather stack 1 ounce silver rounds or coins or large bars? Again, I'm more of a fan of coins personally, just because they're smaller. So I'm a fan of junk silver. Junk silver meaning, like, you know, your dimes, quarters, half dollars. I'm a fan of that kind of stuff personally, just because again the premiums are pretty low, and I mean, well, they aren't now. They were back in the day, but Delta killed 300. Yeah, so yeah, 300 guards. So yeah, I didn't know that number actually. So I'm glad somebody chimed in with that. But like, yeah, that's the reason why. Now, am I okay with that? Well, I mean, I think that, here's how I would say that. Do you ever see the Lone Wolf and Cub? I don't know, some of you are like, you know, some of you will be samurai movie buffs, you know, like Shogun Assassin or Lone Wolf and Cub series. There's probably going to be like maybe 1 or 2 of you out there that are into that kind of stuff. There is this one piece of dialogue in Shogun Assassin, which is it's a Japanese movie, and from the 70s, and there's this one line, because it's narrated by a little kid, so it's narrated from his perspective, of his dad, who is the shogun's decapitator, and who leaves the shogun because the shogun is afraid of him, and he points. They go on these adventures, and I can never remember the guys' names, but anyway, his father, ends up having to massacre lots of people in their travels just to exist. And he tells his son, don't be angry with them, that instead you should pray for their souls, because these are lost souls. That's about where I would be at. When the rubber meets the road, that's about where I would be on that. Like, these are clearly lost people that have totally lost their way. They've lost their common sense. They're no longer rational people. Rationality can be met with rationality. Irrationality cannot. People who are irrational, people who are addicted to cheap money, cheap credit, the casino of life, they're addicted to all this stuff. There's no talking with those people. You can try and reason with them, but your reasoning and their pensions, which one wins, right? So, they're going to look at they're going to look at the pensions. They're going to look at, like, well, hey, these are, now, having said that, I mean, you could, someone, if they were thinking about it, how I would do it, I can tell you how I would do it, would be to offer police and military, say, listen, you're not going to get your pensions. First of all, pensions aren't going to be worth anything anyway. Let's just be real here. They're going to print the money to worthlessness long before you try to cash in those chips. So by the time you cash in your pension, you're thinking, oh, I'm going to have $2 million. It isn't going to buy you a tank of gas by the time you get there. So how about we just do what we did in the old days? I'll just give you land and you own it outright forever. All the minerals, everything, it's yours, and you own it for tax-free, and there's your payment. Especially, you can't print more of it. You own it forever, no taxes. That's a pretty decent deal. 40 acres of farmland, 160 acres of farmland, to me, is worth a whole lot more than what these guys are offering, you know, paper, fake money nonsense. I wouldn't offer that. I think that's crap. I think it's insulting. But that's just me. I used to just blasting a woman a couple days in the face, or driving around with their dog. Yeah, I know. That's where we're at. And you know, it's a question. To me, it's questionable. I'm not even taking sides on that. I really don't. I wasn't there, so I don't take any sides on it. It's a questionable shoot. I think anybody on either side trying to say one is right, one is wrong, I think those guys are crazy, shredding their credibility on something questionable. That I don't know that I would go down that road. Just me personally. There seems like other things we could be discussing that are really important. Coolest pew pew to ever come through your pond. Well, the coolest, or well, Lottie, 20 millimeter Lottie cannon, anti-tank rifle that came through. I want to say I paid $12,000 for it back in the day. I don't know what they sell for now. They're probably $50,000 now, who knows? But I paid $12,000 for it, and the buyer was in Florida. I want to say he paid $14,500 for it, plus freight, and freight was expensive because I had to crate it. I actually had to build a wooden crate. Because it's like this tall. It's like a 7-foot piece of equipment, and yeah, it actually had to be crated and everything. It took me. I built it in my garage, and it took me like a day and a half to build that crate to make sure it wasn't going to move around and slosh and fall apart and everything, because it's really expensive, and there's not many of those floating around the market. They used to sell them in back of Boys Life magazine back in, I want to say, the 60s, 1960s. Like you could buy them for like $200. And they, you know, with a couple hundred rounds of ammo. Seriously, that's back in the day. But yeah, that's probably the coolest, just because it's the most interesting. You don't see, like, most people in their lifetime will go their whole life and they will never see something like that. You know, old, you know, late World War I, early World War II, 20 millimeter anti-tank rifle. Most people aren't going to see stuff like that. But very cool. There are videos on YT though, for people who want to look them up. You can look them up. To pull the bolt back, you actually have to turn a crank, and that pulls the bolt back, and then you squeeze, you know, like the P7 M8s, you squeeze those and it shoves the bolt forward. The whole thing goes clunk. It's incredible. What happens if Greenland becomes part of the United States? Does deflation happen? No, I don't see any reason for that would happen. I don't think anything would really come of that. I think that if that actually did happen, I'm not sure that the average American is really going to feel any, and that's kind of one of the things that I was mentioning earlier in a video today that I did, was like, the average American isn't going to be benefited by any of this stuff. Like, this is all at the banker level. This is all at the elite level, or the oligarch level. You know, the Epstein Island swine level. The average American pleb is not going to feel any of this. Like, well, the gas prices came down. Dude, it's December and January. Historically, gas prices always come down in December and January. That's on a flex. Come back and talk to me when gas prices are $1 a gallon in August. Then maybe I can say something about that. But then again, on a per American basis, what does that really do? Not a whole lot. It just doesn't hit quite as hard. Hold on. It did it again. There we go. We already have a military in Greenland. What else trouble? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, Alaska and Russia are something like, what, 4 miles apart? There's not a very big piece of water between the two land masses. So this idea that, well, we want to have a buffer zone, like, okay, so explain Alaska. Explain that to me. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. You've got 4 miles. Greenland is a site further away. No, I mean, the Greenland thing, along with the South America thing, and like, this is all just to prop the dollar up. That's all this is. It's just because it's like, yeah, hey, we have resources now, so now go ahead and loan us more money, loan us more money, loan us more. FDR did the same thing. Loan us a bunch of money, we'll put it out there, and then we'll create this booming economy. Even though it's not really booming, you just pushed more money into the economy. You didn't actually create, the economy didn't expand, you just put more money in it. That's it. And so prices went up. Everybody gets to feel rich again. It's a fix. That's all it is. That's what I like to aim for as a farm and land. Use it for, yeah, I mean, that's it. I would love to see that. I'd love to see us go back to something like that, personally. I think a lot of people now are kind of realizing maybe that the Amish kind of had the right of it. I'm not talking about like foregoing electricity or anything else, but I mean, like, there's something to be said for kind of having a little bit of a simple life. There's something to be said for that. And I think a lot of people are starting to appreciate, a lot of Americans I think are starting to appreciate that, you know, you don't have to go full Quaker with this. You don't have to do that. You don't have to grow the beard and all, you don't have to do any of that stuff. And you can still drive cars, there's nothing wrong with that, but maybe there's something to be said for just having something kind of simple as opposed to this weird complex society that is really, we're building a future that a lot of people don't want. I mean, in my Fed video that I did, I don't know, a few days ago, I pointed that out, that it's like, why are we all building a future that nobody seems to, if you ask people what kind of future they want, most of the stuff that they're doing to build the future that's coming, nobody wants that future. They don't want to have a data center in their backyard where they listen to a hum all day that never goes away. Most people don't want that kind of future. They would like to have, you know, the future that they want, not what some corporate oligarch wants or some mega corporation that hates you, right? It's like it's the women thing. Let me pick on women for a second here. You know, these young chicks some of them are starting to realize now that, like, dude, yeah, why do you want to work for these companies hate you? Why would you want to work for them? You're only there for the money, and that's it. So that's how it is with people. They're just there for the money. It's like, okay, yeah, but that money wouldn't exist if there was an actual market in place. So if there was an actual free market, then you wouldn't have something like that, right? So there wouldn't be a market for it, so all this stuff would go away. Then you could build the future that you wanted as opposed to the future that some oligarch wants or the government wants. Worse, the oligarchs and the government working together to make sure that everybody is basically appropriately enslaved. Andrew Tate is right about that. I'm not a huge fan, but I gotta tell you, you know, I have the same internet you have. I see him, and he is not incorrect on that assessment. He's not. That is the goal: is to just enslave humanity to this madness, whatever it is, whatever ism you want to call this. Just enslave everybody to it. It's not good. Let's see here. No idea where to begin. You mean like for a farm? Yeah, I mean, look for owner financing if you can. It is out there. It's hard to find, but it is out there. Find a good agent. I mean, I'm not trying to make this a real estate seminar. One of these days, I may actually have to do that for people who want to just learn some of that stuff as far as real estate's concerned. But they're out there. Find an agent that specializes in land and that understands that you're trying to live there. You're not buying it for an investment property, because there's a lot of people who do that. They want to just buy it for an investment property and never do anything with it. If you're saying, no, I want to buy some land and I actually want to live there and build a small farm there, that's very different. And then, you know, it is a little easier to find people occasionally who will do owner financing, where you'll put, like, say, 10% down in cash, but then you just make the real simple payments to it and keep your payments low, so that way you can actually build your farm. It's just Greenland has minerals. Yeah, it does. Greenland has minerals. So does the U.S., though. That's the thing, too. I mean, the U.S. has basically everything. We have all kinds of stuff here. So the U.S. is a fortress, and you wouldn't know that by the way everybody treats it. But the U.S. as a country is a fortress. It really doesn't even need a military. The founders knew that. It really doesn't even need a military. I mean, especially if you have an armed population. If you have an armed population the way they're supposed to be armed, which is with everything, if you have a cruise missile and I have a cruise missile, we can talk about the law, right? So, yeah, I mean, if that were the case, you really don't even need to have a military. You know, a Navy, sure, and by extension a Marine Corps, but you really don't need to have any of the rest of that stuff. So that means there's just lower taxes, because you don't need to feed that baby, that apparently $1.5 trillion annual nonsense. You gotta be kidding me. to do all this stuff, because the country itself is a fortress. It has oil. We have oil. We have minerals. We have agriculture. We have so much agriculture that we give away food. The U.S. is incredibly rich, blessed country. And that's not just to say that because of the people. No, I mean like in terms of like as a country, it is incredibly rich. It's not as big a deal as like the continent of Africa, but it's still. And of course, if you have a declining population and things are going to be becoming more efficient, well, then you just need fewer resources, don't you? Which means that prices should come down. We can't have that. We can't have prices coming down, because then that means that Americans would be able to, like, I don't know, own property, save money, and have a retirement and not have to worry about the government bailing them out, would they? Well, we can't have that. Dude, we can't have any of that. That would be just terrible, wouldn't it? So, yeah, I mean, that's, agree to prop the dollar. Yeah, it's really what it is. It's just to keep the dollar and this Ponzi scheme, the U.S. dollar, going, because that's all the dollar is. It's just a Ponzi scheme. It requires more and more debt to keep it propped up. And as more people, it's why, for example, there's this huge pushback on student loan forgiveness. Let me get into a controversial territory here. I know this is going to freak everybody out. I'm not actually for student loan forgiveness per se. I think you should just send every American a check for $200 grand and call it good. Just say, hey, if you owe student loans, pay it off. If you don't have student loans, then you get $200,000. And if you already paid off your student loans, consider this a rebate for going to these institutions that nobody likes, and they're not teaching anything worth knowing anyway. I call it like I see it, and that's just it. I don't see it. So yeah, if that were the case, but then what would people do? What would a lot of people do? Some people would go to the casino and gamble it. That's true. Some people would go do a bunch of drugs. Some people would go do all this. That's true. But what would a lot of people do? A lot of people, the majority of people, would say, "Oh wow, I'm going to pay everything off. I'm going to pay off all my debt." Well, if you understand the way that the U.S. dollar works as a debt-based currency, well, if everybody pays off all their debt, that means that money is worth less in terms of in terms of being able to pull more debt from other parts of the world, because you have fewer people that you can enslave to make your currency valuable. There's actually a little throwaway line that happens in the movie The Gambler, in fact. So not the old Kenny Rogers one, but the one with Mark Wahlberg and John Goodman, the one that the ones that I post periodically, the John Goodman speech. You get up $2.5 million. Anybody knows in the world knows what to do. You buy a house with a 25-year roof, an indestructible Japanese economy car. I'm trying to say it that way. I mean, I'm cleaning it up a little bit, but it's like, yeah, that's right. Well, there's actually a line from before all of that, and it's a different scene with the same two guys, and the Mark Wahlberg character is asking for money, and the loan shark, played by John Goodman, says, ordinarily with that kind of money, I don't loan it out unless it's going to a country that can tax all their population into poverty to pay it back. It's a slight jab, but it's the truth, and that's the reality. So if you can't tax your population into oblivion to pay back all this stuff, then why would any of these other countries loan you anything? Yeah, so I hear many other countries are going to step away from the dollar. They want to. There was an attempt at de-dollarization, which is what radicalized the Orange administration. Is they cannot have that happen, because then the U.S. goes broke. It's truth. The U.S. goes broke. Now the American people are fine, but the U.S. government and all of their oligarchs and all of that fake stock market and all of that big casino, that all goes away. If the dollar goes away, that all goes away. The American people are just fine, except for the people who have fake jobs. So the people who just do Zoom meetings and things like that, yeah, they're screwed. They're already screwed because of the so-called AI, which that's not really what it is. It's just that you're being replaced with cheap labor from other countries. You can't even get a hold of it. Call a mega corporation. Good luck getting somebody that's actually in the U.S. Most people are not. We all know that. Whole country knows that. So you're rapidly being replaced with all. That's what's replacing you. It isn't AI. It isn't a bot. It's not It's not C-3PO replacing you. It's somebody in another country doing it cheaper, doing it for a fifth or a tenth the cost. That's what's replacing you. No, I mean, if that actually happened, here's what would happen for the average American. The dollar collapsed. Here's what would actually end up happening. The next morning, there would be just panic and freak out and chaos and all kinds of crazy, yeah, for a little while. And then entrepreneurs, people like myself and others, would say, okay, now there's easy to find markets. What do people need? How do we find the need and fill it? And then, of course, it's going to be the people who do all of the work who make all the money. In a real economy, the people who do the work actually make the money, not the people who do the fake work, but the people who do the actual work. All those jobs that nobody wants to do, that they claim Americans won't do. And of course, if there is no more US dollar, most illegals will leave on their own, because why would they stay here and have to deal with a currency that probably has less value in their home country, when they could just go back to their home country and work for rupees or for pesos or what have you, because those have more value in their country. So you're like, well, but that would be horrible for the Americans. Again, not really. The average American probably wouldn't notice a whole lot of this. The stock market bros, your bankers, brokers, boomers, fake billionaires, yeah, those guys all get just decimated on something like that. They get wiped completely out where they're supposed to. They were supposed to get wiped out back in 2008. True story. They were supposed to be wiped out way back then. It's just they would be wiped out now. So, and then the average American, then gets to buy up all those assets for pennies. And yeah, that's how you do it. And then you own your property, which means if you own your property, you own your building, that means you own your business. If you own your business, your property, your building, well, then you don't have any debt. And then if your business is slow, business is just slow, right? So, but I think that's what a lot of this had to do with. This guy's red, hell yes. Thank you, I appreciate it. The man finally caught it live. You did. Congratulations. I'm here occasionally. I haven't been able to get really consistent with it. Thank you for going live. You're very welcome. It's time for the people to order the Tree of Liberty. I know. I see that one all the time. The Tree of Liberty. It thirsts. It indeed does. It certainly seems that way anyway. Heavily armed population. I agree. Couldn't agree more. Soon Elon can fund the military himself. Believe it or not, I'm not kidding. It seems like that you would think with as much money as he had, but like when you see those, you ever see those videos, those military videos, where they show the plane firing like one missile, and it shows the cost. It shows like that, and it's to a practice target, and it's $98,000. It's like, it doesn't sound like much, but 98 grand here, 2 or 3 billion there, and pretty soon it's real money. Things you don't learn in high school or college, you're not going to hear any of this stuff there, I promise you. And it's a shame too, because you should hear all this. Like, this stuff should be like normal conversation at the college. It's certainly at the college level. It's certainly at the collegiate level or the academia level. You should be hearing this stuff all the time, even if you don't agree with the subtext. Even if you disagree with maybe someone, like I get lots of people who disagree with me on lots of stuff, and that's fine. You can disagree with me all you want, but you can still have an academic discussion about it. There's no reason you can't have that, unless you're just letting emotion, dictate who you are. Which, if that's the case, then that means that you know what I mean? Like that's not a very good thing to do to tie. That is not the same thing as having a personality. An ideology is not a personality. That's not a good thing to do. But they don't want us to pay anything out. No, they want debt. They want people in debt. They want lots of people in debt. The sooner if people pay off too much debt, that's called an overheated economy for my new people. For those of you wondering, like, what's an overheated economy? I've heard them say that on CNBC. That is econobabble for poor people paid off too much debt. And now we got to find some way to get them back into debt. Quick, make cars with garbage engines. That way they break all the time. So that way they are constantly having to fix their garbage cars, or have to go pay for rental cars, or have in other words, the whole idea is about the number of transactions. Otherwise, remember, what would your life be like if you owned your house, your property, your car, and everything? I've said this a couple of times, but think about it. Put yourself in the situation mentally. If you owned all that stuff completely outright right now, and you had no bills, and all of the stuff that you owned was really high quality, so it didn't break very often, how many transactions would you be doing in a day or a month? Probably not very many, right? You'd be like me. You'd be like, dude, I'd hardly do a whole lot of transactions, especially when you can make your own stuff, especially when you have your own equipment to make a lot of things. So you're not doing a ton of transactions. They cannot have that. They have to have you constantly moving their dollars around because of velocity. So government works for the banks and vice versa. They are a give and take. Those poor government employees. The dollar collapses. If the dollar collapses, Blockbuster are making a comeback entrepreneur. You know, that would be interesting. That'd be interesting to see if that were to happen. That's where I'm at when I hit 60. I'm moving to a different country, retirement not. Let's see here. Still pay insurance, so it sits outside. That example. Your thoughts on the silver spike for a shortage? So okay, I'm not a silver expert. You want David Morgan for that. David Morgan, I think it's silverguru.com. He's really pretty much the expert on that. However, I can say that it's not surprising. Silver's been a heavily manipulated metal for a long time. It's been undervalued, at least in terms of dollars. I think it's way undervalued. It probably should be way more than that. Especially when you look at gold at whatever gold's like what, 4,500 now or something like that. I haven't looked today, or yesterday, but gold's like $4,500. That's a lot, and there's no real end in sight to that as this continues. I mean, are they going to stop printing money? Probably not. So, I think if I were gambling, I would say that, like, if you're just trying to make dollars, I would say from that perspective, yeah, sure. Do I think that silver will pull back a little bit? Yeah, there's going to be profit takers, especially on a spike that high. There's going to be people who are gonna absolutely try and cash in on that if they're smart. Especially the people that are because you can't ignore the program traders, right? You can't ignore those guys because a lot of it is on dollars. But if you're buying like physical silver, and then you're just sitting on it for like a savings account, that's very different. You're not really worried about the day-to-day. It's just like the same thing with Bitcoin, same thing with gold, same thing with any of that stuff. You're not trying to trade it, you're just sitting on it as a hedge, right? But if you're looking at it from the trading perspective, it wouldn't surprise me if there's a pullback. I mean, at least a 10-15% pullback as other people try to liquidate their positions, so that way they can just take their money and go do something, right? I mean, so what's the best way to stack junk silver? I always liked quarters and dimes and half dollars. Those are you can pick them up. The premiums usually aren't too bad, and versus a melt price. So you're usually not paying a whole lot. If you want a recommendation for where to buy, I don't usually do this, but I mean, American Coin Vault is really good. They are very honest people. I've done business with them for many years. They're not here in Texas. They're up in Washington State, but American Coin Vault is a really good one, and they're good people. I've known those guys for 22 years now. We've done business, so yeah. And that was back even in the pawn business. We had a lot of the same customers. So sold my silver this week, swap for gold. Yeah, that's a play to make. I'm not saying, by the way, I'm not giving out advice. I'm just saying that that's a play. Just gold 45.26. Yeah, I know. That means that minimum wage actually should be something like what, $2.08 an hour? At that kind of price, that's really what it should be. When you factor in the 1971 minimum wage of $1.60 an hour, this is how bad this is getting. It still blows people's minds. It blows my mind, but it still like blows people's mind when you actually frame it that way and you explain the minimum wage that way, and then especially if you can get past the people that I don't get it too much anymore. There's not too many people who fight me on the minimum wage any longer. This has been interesting, at least over on Bird's site. There's not a lot of people who want to tangle with me on the minimum wage thing because I destroyed them so thoroughly. There's usually just a smoldering crater where they once stood, because they keep trying to apply free market hard money principles to this economy. That doesn't work. That's showing up to play hockey, and you're actually playing football. It's not even the same sport, dude. Not even, no. You're showing up for a track and field event, in lacrosse out, like, dude, no, come on. Not even the same thing. So, yeah, I mean, when you look at the way that the devaluation of the currency has been, if your minimum wage in 1971 was $1.60 an hour, with gold prices being what they are now, using the gold standard, which is the basic gold standard, which was $35 an ounce. That was the regular gold standard instituted by FDR in, I don't remember what year, sorry, that's stretching my memory. But they revalued, I think 1933, I think that's when they did that. And it's like, yeah, from $20 to $35 an hour, $35 an ounce. Well, 1.83 ounces is what you would have gotten on 40 hours at $1.60 an hour. Today, that would make your minimum wage like $2.08 or $2.06 or something like that per hour. Per hour is what that would be, to have the same spending power that somebody had in 1971. And then, you know, of course, that's when you hear from boomers that say, no, just pull yourself up from your bootstraps. You're just not working hard enough. No, it's the destruction of the currency that's happened. That's what happened, the destruction of the currency. But then that takes people having to rethink their hypocrisy in every statement that they've made. I'll tell you an old story, actually, for those of you who want to hear this. Actually, there was a boomer. I'm not just picking on boomers. I'm picking on this specific boomer. His whole thing was like, you know, that like, no, just work harder the whole bit. This is the same guy that like when he was in high school, you know, during the summer break, you know, he made enough money to work in part-time to buy a car. How many people are doing that nowadays? Not too many kids are doing that kind of thing. And at his job, when he retired from his job, he was making like $145,000 a year. Now that was his peak salary. Even, and this is in Seattle, even if you gave a brand new person that salary today, that $145,000 a year in Seattle, which is, for anybody who's familiar with Seattle knows that that's not a lot of money by comparison. And certainly not to live in Bellevue. Again, if you know the geography, you know what I'm talking about. And to make so how much money would you have to be paid to do that job, to live the same lifestyle? Not have the same money, but the same lifestyle. Yeah, I did the math one time. It's something like, you know, $510,000 a year to be able to say. That's how bad it's gotten. So, you know, yeah, it really puts it in focus when you really think about it like that. What career path would you say I should get into? I don't know you that well. And just a guy that despises today's workforce, 37 years old. I don't know, do horseshoes. You know, be a farrier. I mean, a lot of people pay cash. I mean, if you want to do something like that and get away from everything. I suppose if I were 37 again, which was many moons ago for me, but if I were 37 again, I'd probably look into something like that, something cash. You know, is that, or I would be, well, if I were 37 again, if I had a 37-year-old back, I would probably do concrete and welding and fabrication. That's just my personality, though. I like building stuff, so I would probably be looking into stuff like that. And then just, especially, you know, you can find some machine shops. There are not many anymore. They're getting harder to find in the States because so much of that's gone overseas. But you know, if you can find it, that's a good skill to have. It's an interesting skill to have. Most people don't have it. And you can find work independently. Because there's always somebody who needs to have something made on a CNC table. So I'm putting a CNC table in my house when I get my house finished. When I finally get the shop built, I'm going to build a CNC table as well. What's a better investment, silver or gold? I'm a fan of gold personally. But it depends on what your investment goal is. So I mean, I'm more of a saver than I'm an investor. Find someone local to buy from, if you can, yeah. If you can find somebody local to buy from, and they're not going to completely grape you on the premium, yeah, you know, that's always good. Hourly wage should be gold. I agree. I'd love to see it. If it's not going to be in physical gold, then it should be at least keeping up with the inflation that they're creating, which would be something like $206 an hour or whatever it is. I need to pay myself more. Shit. Don't we all, right? Let's see, screw the left coast. Yeah, I know. I know I'm from Seattle. I grew up there. Trucking is changing money. Is changing money to be made. I don't know what you mean. Sorry. It's getting harder to make any money in trucking. Again, I said this as a truck driver and truck owner. It's getting much harder to make any money. I make $150K. My wife the same. We still need struggling. If you're in New York City, dude, that's brutal. New York City is just brutal. Everything's expensive. Bro, I once lost $120 in 3 minutes. First time visiting Vegas, I immediately knew gambling. It's enough to make you a believer. The last time I was in Vegas, this is years ago, years and years and years ago. This is, so let me think, yeah, Bush was in office. That's how far back. I mean, I've been through Vegas since then, but I'm talking about like actually been to Vegas. Yeah, Bush was still in office. That's how far back it was. And it was, in fact, that's the last time I was actually drunk, was when Bush was in office, you know, because I learned my lesson on that. You know, so like, it's like, you know, there's drink, right? And then there's drink. I drink, but I don't do that anymore for very, very good reasons. Fortunately, there's no video of any of that. So I'm one of the lucky people. Nowadays, kids can't drink like that anymore. That's why nobody does any of that stuff. It's like, dude, you're gonna be a YouTube superstar or something. You're gonna go viral because of your behavior. Thankfully, and I think this is true for most Gen Xers. Most of the Gen Xers are actually, when you really think about it, you're really thankful that, like, dude, none of that behavior in the 90s and early 2000s is on video and went viral. So you get really thankful for that. But yeah, that's the last. But the last time I was in Vegas, I want to say, I think I lost like $60, and I felt guilty for like 2 weeks at the tables. I'm not talking about the $400 I gave out on tips to people because I was completely wasted. I'm not talking about that. Or I don't even know it was $400. It's whatever I had in my pocket. I have no idea how much money I had in my pocket at the time. I think it was only, I hope it was only $400. I try to tell myself it was only $400. It may have been more. I don't know. I don't remember. In my high school years, we're not recording. Yeah, I know. A lot of people are very thankful that that's the case. It's a lot more money on women than gambling. Yeah, no kidding, huh? Okay, cause face to case. I'm 7. Yeah, I know. No kidding, huh? That's me too, from the 70s. And so yeah, I mean, the late 90s, which was a lot of fun for me, but yeah, fortunately there wasn't a cell phone inside. It's just people living in the moment, and nobody remembers much, which is good news. Guys, I'm out of here. It's been lots of fun. Can't lay down, so, and then I will catch up with you guys probably next time. Okay, see you soon.